Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maciek, and on this channel I look at design practice issues. I'm a product designer and I will try to show them to you as best as possible. I'm discussing methodological, technological, psychological and other more or less logical issues. Although a lot is said about design, few people know how complex the process is. I would like to dedicate it to the people who are not directly involved in the designing but have an impact on its course of action. I believe that by breaking stereotypes I will contribute to the promotion of knowledge about the true face of design. Let's meet the designing matters together. Who is that product designer? Design is as varied as our reality is. When someone asks about profession, and one answers, a designer, the question is immediately asked, designer of what? When it comes to designing for industry, the name industrial designer seems quite appropriate, but is it precise nowadays? Unfortunately not. Although it brings us a bit closer to the nature of what we design, it still leaves a lot of room for guesswork. There are many industries where a designer is needed. If one is designing for the industry, the most often a product of some kind is the result of the designer's work. However, in the 20th of 21st century, a product designer is more often associated with user interface or user experience designer than an industrial designer, which is surprising as the UI/UX designer may be associated more with a software graphic and most of all interaction designer than the product we have known so far. Of course, the software is also a type of product, but the name of the software itself is much more precise when it comes to defining the field of activity of this type of a designer. If we say software designer, we will create a picture of the issues we deal with in the listener's mind much faster and more accurately. Until now, we have called the designer of physical utility items a product designer, and software interface designers have been called the interaction designer. The methodology and principles of design are identical in both disciplines. The only difference is the software used to create simulations and functional models. There has been a clear appropriation of the nomenclature by mostly non-specialized HR agencies. As you can see, the market for design services is sometimes developing faster than the fossilized competences of headhunters. In fact, hardly anyone knows how diverse designing forms are and, surprisingly, how much they have in common. I will try to present a few of them in order to also lighten the situation for aspiring designers who do not really know what aspects to focus on when trying to start their professional life in each of them. At the same time, this knowledge may turn out to be useful for an entrepreneur who decides to cooperate in a creative manner to determine what type of a designer is most useful for him or her and what is the specificity of his work. Designing objects can be divided into several categories. Let's say the first is a category of the high complexity devices. And here, in addition to product designers, those who are not usually called product designers play an important role. Product engineers, because that's their proper name, are people who develop the functionality and automation or electronic mechanism and maybe software. They are part of a design team but are not strictly referred as to product designers. This name has become commonplace for people who design visual and functional sphere of the product's existence. These people usually work in specialized departments of large companies and are recruited on the basis of proficiency in creating ideation and schematic drawings and software knowledge for visualizing them, as well as for creating machine files, production tools, injection molds, etc. This is definitely the most expensive method of designing because it requires office maintenance, expensive software, and a multitude of employees every day. For a designer, it is a comfortable workplace without the need to invest large funds, but a lot of time for self-improvement of the methodology, technical and conceptual drawing. Another category is related to the production of simpler items, where the production technology is less complex and new products are not developed all the time by our own design team, but by hired, external, usually independent design offices. Designers of such products should also be proficient in creating concepts and their 2D and 3D visualization and creating prototypes, because it may happen that the company for which they create may not have such a prototyping facility. This kind of cooperation is preferred by small, often family-run businesses. Designers are recruited by recommendation, good press, the popularity of the designer's name and body of work, his presence at various fairs, exhibitions, and design competitions. Additionally, these designers should have the ability to present their achievements in the media in order to attract attention. This method of project cooperation requires less expenditure from the client than the previous one, due to the short-term cost of the project and the possibility of postponing the creation of a new product if there is no such need. However, a designer who wants to run his own independent studio unfortunately decides to incur considerable own cost. A bit like a professional athlete investing in his skills and place in the ranking. The development of this form of activity to the point where it brings some profit can take up to a whole decade and is quite a risky undertaking only for the bold ones. The next category of designed items are so-called one-time orders or one-offs that do not have the features of serial production. A single project might be commissioned due to its marketing suitability as an interesting and eye-catching exhibition or interactive object. The client might want to use it for a photo session, for example a catalog, as a prop, or as an element of a trade show. This category includes orders from institutions such as museums, companies not related to mass production, private persons, companies organizing trade fairs and exhibitions, etc. Among such projects, there may be interior design elements, fair stands, presentation and interactive installations performing some interesting action. Designers of this type of objects are required to be able to present their own ideas and visualizations, which, as you can see, is a standard in each of these groups. Other useful features are great fantasy in approach to prototyping, supervising the production of components of installations commissioned outside their workshop, and broad DIY skills in general. This category of projects is mainly carried out by designers who, due to their versatility, are called designer makers. Often, their projects seem to be a combination of functionality or art, or a mixture of both in some proportions. The designer maker category is also often based on creating own products and distributing them through various types of fairs, as well as the online market. Designers of this type should demonstrate very high degree of independence, probably by far the greatest of all those mentioned so far. Of course, these three types of approach to a design career can intertwine, and the designer maker will be able to design something for a family-owned production company, and a design studio working on behalf of the manufacturer can release its own product in a limited series or to design a visually interesting individual contraption. Part of the charm of a design is in this dose of freedom. If you are a person who has discovered the need to design, I recommend that you immediately find yourself in one of these categories and improve specific skills listed here, because the will, commitment, and consistency in developing specialized competencies and skills will significantly facilitate the right direction for searching for a future job and help clients in finding your strength quickly. If you do not feel comfortable with being a small cog in a large machine, then I would not advise you to look for a designer position in a large company. And if you do not feel up to building your own studio and taking care of everything on your own, such a large company will be the most convenient and suitable goal. But such career path requires a great deal of persistence. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. I tried to raise the subject and make you aware. I'm happy to contact with those of you experienced in the topic and perhaps continue it in another podcast. Do not hesitate to leave a feedback on this episode. Leave me a thumb up if you find this channel valuable. Please share it through the network and hit subscribe button to not to miss the next episode. Until next time.